What's up, North Point Church? My name is Chris Torres, and I get to help out here on the team as one of the teaching pastors as well as one of the campus pastors. And I just wanted to let you all know that last week was actually my 1-year anniversary of being here at North Point. And man, do I love this church. I've met some of the most amazing people here at this church. Whether you've been volunteering, whether we've had coffee or lunch, I've been so impacted by the people of this church, especially our pastor, Jeremy. Man, he is one of a kind, and I am so glad and thankful for the entire leadership of this church and to be a part of it. Whether that's campus pastors, Brad, Andy, Jody over the Dream Center, whatever it is. I love being a part of this church, and I'm grateful to be here and even excited about this series called Mousetrap, a series all about temptation. This is week 3. Jeremy started week 1 by talking about cheese and what's your temptation, what's your cheese. Second week was all about habits, and this week I want to talk to you about the power of your environments. Because your environments have a huge impact on your temptation. I want to show you how today. I want to start by reading Proverbs 13:20. It says this: "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but a companion of fools suffer harm." Now, this verse is telling us that what's around us has an impact on us. Now, I know this story or this series is called Mousetrap, but maybe you've had experience with mice, maybe you haven't. But you know what I've had experience with? Rats. And let me tell you something about rats. Rats aren't scared of you. Rats, I opened a closet door once when I lived in Los Angeles in a hallway, and there was a rat standing right on a cable looking me dead in the eye. Didn't even budge. Wasn't scared at all. He was kind of like calling me out a little bit. But this is what I know about rats, is they're not afraid of us. And like I said, I lived in Los Angeles at the original Dream Center. It was a 15-story hospital built in the 50s. So lots of old pipes, old tunnels, all kinds of stuff like that. So anything that was a renovation or an addition to any of the rooms and floors that we might have lived on, well, they were built without any insulation. Like, it was literally just a sheet of drywall to separate the rooms, which got real interesting when I moved to the marriage floor. Some of you may get that. But here's what impacted me so badly so much about that was the rats, when they ran through the roof. I mean, it would sound like cats fighting. It was so scary. At any moment, I thought they were going to fall in. Well, one night I was sleeping. I had the room to myself. My roommate was gone, and I was sick, so I had some NyQuil. Well, I lay down, I go to sleep, and while I'm sleeping, I hear this, and I can't tell if it's the NyQuil, if it's a nightmare, or if it's real life. But then something happened. As I was laying on my pillow, I could feel the impression, the sinking in of my pillow literally right next to my face. And I became a Tasmanian devil. I mean, I was swinging. I jumped up, probably even sound like a Tasmanian devil because of the NyQuil. Blah, 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 blah. And I flipped on the lights and there was nothing there. Well, again, the NyQuil, I just shut the lights back off and went right back to sleep, completely forgetting about it all. The next day, I'm eating a sandwich in my room, and the neighbor down the hall comes and knocks on the door, says, "Chris, we got a problem." I said, "What is it?" And he says, "Rats." And immediately I remember the night before. And if you can remember what it was like to be in middle school and to have somebody tell you tell you you got to fight them after school, or you got to go home with a bad report card, that sinking in my stomach immediately came in, and I was like, oh no. He walks me to his room. The doors had about an inch crack between the floor and the door. And he had bought these rubber strips and put them on both sides because we thought we had a mice problem. Well, the rat chewed through both of those. Then he took me into his couch, and on his couch was the cushion, and the rat had dug a hole inside of the cushion and laid about 9 babies. Oh, I can still see that image is scarred and burned into my brain. I will never forget it. But you know what I did? I left that day. I took vacation. I went straight to the Home Depot. I didn't get wood. I didn't get plastic. I didn't get rubber. I got metal. And then I took it to our construction team, and every hole, every gap, every crack between a door, I covered with sheets of metal. There was no way that rat would ever get back into my room. I went to the nth degree to keep that rat out of my room. And as I thought about that, I thought about temptation, and I realized that while I went to the nth degree and all of that work and trouble in one day to keep one rat out of my room, how often have I allowed temptation to just surround me? To just lay right there on my pillow, be right in front of my face. And you know what? It's probably hurt me more than that rat did. Because like I said, the rats aren't scared of us. Let me tell you something about temptation. It's not scared of you. And it wants to live right in your environment. It wants to be around you. And so here's what I want you to write down. If you're taking notes, is to put this down. My surroundings sustain me or they sink me. Now, your environments actually control so many decisions that you and I likely probably don't even think about. I want to show you that right now. In just kind of think through this a little bit. This morning, when you woke up, the very breakfast you ate was actually a decision you made based on what was in your fridge. The clothes you got up and you put on today that you're wearing was a result of a decision you made based on what was in your closet. What you've chosen to watch on TV last night was determined by the cable company or the cable channels or the apps that you subscribe to that you have available in your environment. The time you have spent, you ready? I'm going to give it to you. The time you have spent being able to pay attention in a conversation is a direct result of how close you are to your phone. You see, so many decisions that we make daily, they're decided by what's around us and the environment that we're placed in. And most of us, because we're not aware of this, we try to do this thing called willpower, white knuckling it, Thundercat ho. We get that mentality and we say, we're just going to wipe it out. I'm going to change. And it'll sound like this. We say things like, I'm going to change blank. I'm not going to be around blank. Once and for all, I am giving up blank. And that's because most of us would like to believe that our habits will follow our intentions. That's what we like to believe. We like to believe that our habits will follow our intentions, but that's not how our brain is wired to work. Actually, our brain is wired to be lazy. Because your brain inputs and takes in so much information every day, your brain actually takes things and creates little habits so it doesn't have to think about it. It doesn't have to exhaust your limited amount of willpower. You can say it this way, your brain is programmed to be lazy. And this helps make your day easier. Some of the habits I talked about, what your brain will do is small little habits, things that it doesn't have to think about. Like for instance, when you brush your teeth, you will typically do one side and then the other side, top, bottom. Maybe you do the tongue first. I don't know, it's gross and weird. I don't know why you do that. But however you do it, it's a habit. You do it the same every day. How you get out of bed every day, the same. What shoe you put on first. And we do that so that our brains don't have to work hard. So what do you think is more work? When you haven't been going to the gym or working out, is it hitting the gym or reaching over and hitting snooze? When you haven't been eating healthy, is it easier to go to the refrigerator for that frozen pizza or to drive to the store to get a bag of broccoli? You will do what's easiest for you to do, and what's easiest is typically what's around you. We absorb our surroundings. We become what's in our surroundings. It's like a chameleon. We just take what's around us and we become it. I have a son, he's 3 years old, and there was a time in his life where he had this crazy obsession with PJ Masks. I mean, his clothes were PJ Masks. His toys were PJ Masks. All he ever wanted to watch on television was PJ Masks. All he ever wanted to ask Alexa to play was PJ Masks theme song. And here's what would happen. Every time that show would come on, the show would come on, da, 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 da. If you're a parent, you know. Catboy would come on. A cat boy, and he'd do his little spin kick. Gecko, he'd crawl. Owlet, I don't know what she does. But they would come on, they would do their things, and my son would mirror exactly what it was they were doing. And then eventually would come the bad guy on TV. And by default, I'm the only person left in the room, so I become that in his head. But he also knows that I'm dad, and I'm an authority figure. And then he would look at me, believing he was a PJ Mask, but knowing that I am dad. He would make a decision to do what he thought he was in his mind. And what he thought he was in his mind was the PJ Masks that he was surrounded by. So he would come running at me. I could see it in his eyes. He was looking at me like, Daddy, I don't want to hit you, but I got to hit you because I'm a PJ Mask. And he would run up and pop right in the lip. Then Dad would change his surroundings, and I'd put him in his room. And here's why I tell you this. When you surround yourself with something, you eventually become it. And when you become it, you make your decisions based on what you believe yourself to be. Watch PJ Masks, pop your dad in the lip. That verse, walk with the wise and become, the Hebrew word for become actually means this, means will be. Let me tell you something. You will be the sum of what you surround yourself with. So my question for us today is this. When it comes to temptation, what is it that's surrounding us? Is it sexual temptation? Because there's so much access to all these different devices, all of these tablets and phones, and none of them have any kind of boundaries or protections against them. Maybe it's money. Maybe we're tempted to overspend, but yet we carry 9 credit cards and all of them have a balance due. Maybe it's gossip. You know, we all love a juicy story, right? And we know the friends that we can hang out with to get those stories, and boy, oh boy, is it fun. Maybe we think we owe loyalty to our friends that we grew up with. But every time those friends call at 4:30 on a Friday night, we can't help but answer it. And then we go through the weekend and we make decisions based on our environments, and we end up sinking. Maybe it's been the temptation for you to allow yourself to be surrounded by work. And when you're surrounded by work, you might clock out at 4 or 5 every day, but you bring it home and you end up ignoring your family. Listen, if that's you, that's me. I've checked all of those boxes. The good news is that we're not the only ones. In fact, the Bible would tell us that since the very beginning of time, people have struggled with what's in their environment. There's Adam and Eve, and they struggled with a tree. I don't know when the last time was you struggled with a tree. Except for my neighbors, I haven't had a problem. His tree was blocking my son's little house, so I had to take care of that tree. But other than that, Jesus actually deals with his environments a lot. He preaches on them a lot. He would tell stories about them. And I want to read you a story that he told, and it's found in Matthew chapter 13, verses 3 through 8. It says this. It says, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he scattered his seed, some fell along a path and the birds ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it didn't have much soil, and it sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up and the plants scorched it, it withered away because there was no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked out the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 and 30 times what was sown. Jesus gives 4 soils, and out of the 4 soils, he said only one of them was good. Only one of those environments was good. Only one of those grounds was good, which tells me this, that good environments are hard to come by. But it also tells me this, that they're not impossible. Jesus actually goes a few parables later and he explains all of these. But what I want to do right now is I want to walk you through each one of these environments, and I've labeled it to help you remember it in your notes. But first I want to start with is the path. Jesus says there's a path, and the seed that falls on it, well, it's just kind of exposed. I would call this the senseless ground. And the senseless ground, that's dangerous. See, I have this condition, and I've had it most of my life. Maybe you've had it, or maybe you know of a friend or a family member that has it. It's called stupid. And for me, I've made a lot of stupid decisions about who I hang out with and where I go, senseless decisions, because I don't even think about it. I'm just here, I'm just there, and this is the seed. It's just kind of casually thrown wherever, and this can be very dangerous. And here's why. Because you can end up around people that are toxic, that don't want to see you succeed. You can end up in environments that will pull you down, that will put you right back where you started. I read a story about crab hunters, crab gatherers, crab picker-uppers. I don't know what they're called. Maybe you do. Comment below if you know. But basically, this guy was with a crab gatherer, picker-upper, and he put these crabs in a bin, and then he didn't put a lid on it. So the guy said, "Hey, why are you not putting a lid on it?" He said, "Well, whenever you put two crabs in a bucket, whenever one crab goes to try to climb out, the other crab will grab it and pull it back down." Moral of the story is this, is if you senselessly just toss yourself into any environment, chances are you're going to end up in a hole with people that don't want to see you succeed. They want to pull you back down. Environments that want to pull you back down. And when you are being pulled down, you're sinking. You're on sinking ground because of what's around you. The second ground is this. It was the rocky ground. I call the rocky ground shallow ground. And shallow ground is disappointing. It says this is the one that just springs up. It looks great, but then immediately it withers away. That's like the spark, right? That doesn't lead to anything. I have zero middle ground in my life. The famous philosopher Drake said, "I go 0 to 100 real quick." And this is what I do. In my car, maybe you're like me, maybe you're not. In my car, when you get in, my AC and my heater only have two positions, off or full blast. Like, I have to have one or the other. I have to have that bad boy whistling and screaming in my face, blowing my hair, keeping me cool, or I need that heater on, warming up my toes. I am all about that because when I get in the car, I want to immediately feel something. I don't do that whole like set it 74.8 and just quiet little breeze that eventually gets to the temperature I want. Nope. I just go for it because I want to feel it right away. And this is shallow ground. And here's why. Because eventually I end up shutting it off. I get so hot or I get so cold that I have to turn it off. I have to make it go away. And for so many of us, this is what shallow ground looks like. You know exactly what I'm talking about. There's no middle ground. You just see something, it's a spark, and you want it, and you dive on in, and you say this is it, only to find out that it's very disappointing. Maybe it was your diet. You said you were going to change. You said you weren't going to do this anymore. There was that spark, that willpower, only to be disappointed a month later. Maybe it was a relationship. Guys, you saw this girl walk in with a beautiful pair of blue eyes. And you said, "Man, that's my next wife." You went out and you rushed into that relationship because the spark was there, and then you found out she's psycho. Or maybe you're a girl, you saw a hunk walk into the room. You're like, "That's my man," right? I'm only speaking from experience because this is what my wife said about me when I married her. Just kidding. She never said that. If she did, she ended up very disappointed. But whatever it is, that spark is there. That spark gets you excited like your friends, right? You can be in environments with your friends. You can say, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to be fun. But when you're paying the bill for that fun, they're typically not there. When you go to jail for that fun, have they ever bailed you out? I know in my life they never did. It's disappointing ground. And here's what it says. It says this, that it ends up being scorched. It isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And this is an environment that can sink you. So we've got the senseless ground. We've got the shallow ground. Here's the third ground. It's the shared ground. And I would call this the defiled ground. Jesus says this is where the weeds grow with it. Now, a couple parables later, he explains what the weeds are. He says it's the worries, the anxieties, and the cares of this world that choke it out. I don't know if you've ever seen weeds grow, but they can grow right alongside the grass, right alongside the things that are healthy. But they grow faster, and they begin to choke out what the grass needs, what the plants need. They begin to kill it because they're growing faster. And here's what I know, is that sometimes you may have all the right surroundings. You may have all the right friends. You may have all the right leaders, all the right people. You may have all the right places. You might have a good job. You might have a good church that you belong to, a good gym, everything around you. But you also got the weeds. You also got the worry. You also got the fear. You got the insecurity. You got the self-doubt. You've got all of these voices going on, and they're choking out all of the good people and places that are around you. And when you start to get choked out because of everything that's going on up here, it's not what's going on out here, you isolate. And when you isolate, if you've ever seen a plant pulled out of its soil, it's not long before it dies. Shallow ground, senseless ground, shared ground, all of it ends up sinking us. But then Jesus says there's a fourth ground. He says this is the good soil. I call this the secure ground. And secure ground, it delivers. I don't know if you watch any sports, but I like to follow athletes, and I love the story of athletes, like a 30 for 30, because they have gotten to the elite spot that they're at, oftentimes because of the environments they've placed themselves in. Story on Kawhi Leonard, plays for the Clippers, probably going to beat the Lakers, but he instead of partying when he was in college, you know what he did? They said he would go in, unlock the gym at 11 o'clock at night, and he would practice till 2, 3 in the morning. He would hang out with players that were better than him. He would hang out with people that were heading in the same direction as him. He would walk with the people that he wanted to be like, that deep down he wanted to be. And here's what's so great about that is when you have that kind of environment around you and that support and that security around you, Kawhi Leonard, he can end up at an away game around a bunch of nonsense, booing fans, people waving things, but he's still able to deliver because of the security that he's been planted in. That's good ground. That's good soil. The seed isn't the moral of this story that Jesus is telling. The seed, he only mentions at the very top that the farmer was throwing it out. The moral of the story is the soil that it falls on. And I put this in your notes, that the success of the seed is a result of its soil. Walk with the wise and become wise. What you're surrounded with, it'll sink you, but it can also sustain you. So let me tell you what good ground looks like, okay? Good ground, secure ground, that delivers, well, it's life-giving. It's life-giving. It doesn't produce death. It's encouraging. It believes in you. It cheers you on. It says you can do this. We believe in you. Ask yourself this question. Who's been the most impactful person in your life? When you think of who the most meaningful people have been, it's probably not the people that have been critical. Probably not the people that said, I don't think you can do this. This is going to be real hard for you to do. Are you sure you can do this at this point of life? I think it's going to be really difficult for you to achieve this. It's probably not been those people. It's also graceful. Good ground is graceful. It's people that will forgive you, people that will say, I'm sorry. Or allow you to say sorry, and they would understand that they're human too, and that they make mistakes, and that they're able to walk with you through yours. They're also honest. They'll also love you enough to tell you the truth, to say, hey, man, I don't know that this is a good idea. Hey, girlfriend, I don't think you should be talking to this person. I don't know if I would be spending money like that. I had a best friend. He's a youth pastor in Minnesota, and he has had some of the hardest conversations with me that I hated to hear in that moment. But I would not have become the person that I am today without that kind of investment in my life. You need people to encourage you. You need people to believe in you. You need people to be graceful and to forgive. And then you also need people to be honest. This is life-giving soil and what you need to surround yourself in. And when you have this, you end up feeling secure. And you're able to deliver the God-given results that He had planned for you since the beginning. The good ground that's secure always delivers, always does. So you might be asking yourself, well, it's easy for you to say, but I'm in one of these other three. How do I switch up my soil? Okay. I put this in your notes. To change your growth, you change your ground. Since we know that our brains are wired to do what's easiest, to be lazy, and what's easiest and what's lazy is typically what's around us and surrounding us, then the best way to change our ground is not by focusing on the goal of changing our environment. It's actually focusing on making that goal easier. So let me give you a couple examples of that. Instead of saying that I'm not going to go out with those friends this weekend, like we've always said, try saying something like this. At 4:30 or at 2:30, I'm going to shut my phone off. Instead of waiting till 4:30 when they call, I'm actually going to shut my phone off earlier so that I can't get that call. That makes your goal of changing your environment easier. Instead of saying, I'm not going to look at that site anymore, I'm not going to go down that road, say something like this. Today, I'm going to go purchase an app. I'm going to purchase a device that blocks all that access, and it notifies somebody whenever I attempt it. That's going to make your goal of changing that temptation much, much easier. Instead of saying, I'm not going to overeat, don't keep the cookies in the cupboard. Take them out in the garage, put them up on a ladder, stick them on the top shelf. I know it sounds stupid and extreme, but when you want it, your brain is going to realize that's not easy for me to get at 10 p.m. at night when I desperately want it. And what we've tried so far probably hasn't worked. And if this message is resonating with you, then you're probably haven't been successful with what we've done before. So why not try it? Maybe it's sex before marriage and you're like, I really don't want to do this. And you tell the person you're dating, hey, we're not going to do this. Instead of having that conversation, why don't you do something like this? Sit down and say, hey, instead of us just saying we're not going to do this, why don't we sit down and create a list of 10 things that we are not going to put ourselves in, places we're not going to be, things we're not going to do that will actually make the goal of achieving that much easier. Maybe you want to be more committed to church and you've said that before, but you just haven't got there. You've tried willpowering it. Do something to make it easier. Like check a box on our connection card right after service. You said you were going to come. Do something to make you more committed. Commit to picking up a friend to bring to church so that you stay coming. Sign up to serve so that you have to show up every week. That makes it easier to stay committed to the goal. If the goal is like giving, say you want to give and you feel like, man, I know God has been challenging me. I know He wants me to do this. I say I'm going to do it, but I don't do it, or I do it once every 6 months because I forget. Do something to make it easier. Set up a reoccurring, because now you don't even have to think about it. And when you don't have to think about it, your brain is not exhausting its willpower and it becomes easier for you to do. The last one I'll give you is this. Instead of going home and saying that you're going to spend more time with your kids, that you're not going to be surrounded by work, that you're done with it, do something like this. Go and buy tickets today to a show, to a water park. Put the date on the calendar. That's going to set you up and produce an environment where you've made it easier for your brain to actually make it happen. Now, before the worship team comes up, here's what I want to say. Is this story, the moral of this story that Jesus is giving is actually based upon the environment that he was in. See, he was speaking to farmers and people who understood it. But more importantly, he was speaking to people that day that were surrounding him that didn't believe in him, that didn't want to see him succeed, that wanted to tear him down and stop him. He was also speaking to people that were on the fence, people that just naturally wanted to do what was easiest, and that would be going back to the Jewish faith. But they wanted to commit to follow him. They just wanted to do what was easier. He was also speaking to people that said they were committed to following him. And here's what I know, is you might find yourself in any of those groups today. Jesus is inviting you to be on good soil. And the moral of this story was Jesus himself. That if you surround yourself with Jesus, he's going to give you the room for growth that you want to see in your life. He's going to give you the ability to fight that temptation. See, Jesus, when he is around you, it begins to change every little piece of your life. So today, make that easier. Check the card. Let us know. Let a pastor help you begin to walk that out. Don't try to fight your temptation by white knuckling it. We know that's not going to work. Fight it by changing your surroundings, by making the change easier. Fight your battles this way. I promise, over time, you'll begin to see the results that deliver. Let me pray. Jesus, we love you. We thank you so much for your grace, for your goodness, for everything that you want to surround our lives with. God, we know that temptation has been so close. God, some of us have been fighting this temptation for years. Help us to find ways to make that easier. Instead of just saying we're not going to do it, God, give us the strength to do it. And for those of us that do not know you yet, God, I pray that today would be the day that they would invite you to surround their life. God, I pray for everyone watching today that this next week would begin a step to be in good ground, whether that's with their friends, in their marriage, with their diets, with their money, whatever it is, God. Give us the courage, give us the strength to do something easy that helps us achieve the environments we want. In Jesus' name, I pray, amen.
Table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemy. It's your body and your blood is shed for me. This is how I fight my battle. There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemy. It's your body and your blood is shed for me. This is how I fight my battle. And I believe you've overcome, and I will lift my song of praise for all you've done. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This This is how I fight my battles. 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 This is how in the valley, I know that you're with me, and surely your goodness and your mercy follow me. So my weapons are praise and thanksgiving, 'cause this is how I fight my